Deb now, and we are going to talk a little bit about Pinchamayurasana, which is translated to forearm stand. And unlike handstand, of course, we're on our forearms, so if you have more open shoulders, forearm stand is going to be a lot more challenging. So I've noticed in my teaching that the people with open shoulders prefer forearm stand, and the people with tighter shoulders prefer handstand because it's less demanding on the shoulders. So if you do have tight shoulders, we don't want to not be able to take forearm stand, so there are ways to use props to help ourselves out. All of us will use a strap because, again, we don't want to have our elbows wider than shoulders distance because that's going to cause that internal rotation again. So the strap is measured shoulder to shoulder, and it'll go above your elbows. And when I teach, I always ask my students to use the strap, and if they're not going to use the strap, they need to be very mindful of where their elbows are in space. And then in the traditional setup, the forearms and the palms are down on the floor, but this is a lot more demanding on the shoulders because the upper arm is externally rotated, and while this forearm is going in the other direction. Okay, so if you interlace your hands, then your upper arm and your forearm are all going the same way, so it just becomes a little less demanding on the shoulders. And then the other prop that you could use is a blanket. So Deb has her yoga blanket folded from the shoulder stand over one more, and then you can take your elbows to the blanket, forearms to the floor, and she's just going to come into a dolphin. She's not going to lift her legs because if somebody does have more open shoulders, it can be very disorienting to then have even more open shoulders. Okay, so this is what it would look like if you have tighter shoulders. So the strap is shoulders distance, the blanket is under the elbows, which just lifts the floor up to you so your upper arm doesn't have to get back by your ear quite so much. And the other difference from traditional forearm stand is that the hands are interlaced. So you can lower back down. If tight shoulders is not your obstacle, then you can slide the blanket out of the way, and then we can use a block. So one reason I like my students to use blocks is because if you don't, you use the strap, but then our hands start to creep in, and then we've lost our foundation. And in all of our poses, the foundation is the most important part to make sure it is in the right place. So we'll use the strap around the elbows, the hands will come to either side of the block, and you'll sort of frame the block. So your index fingers will be on the side of it, and then the thumbs are underneath it. And then when you're ready, you can come to your dolphin. And just like we did for handstand, you can practice just by taking those little hops. So she's pushing with the ball of her foot, lifting up. And this is very energizing. And it's also very hard. And you can lower down when you're ready, Deb. Pause in child's pose or however you want to for a second. So taking those little hops will again give us that sense of whether we're feeling the lightness. Like we can almost sort of tell that the pose is going to come when you can land quietly or when you're feeling that buoyancy in your jump. So when you're ready, you can come back to your dolphin. Take the thumbs under the block, index fingers to the side of the block. So once you're in your dolphin, you'll step one foot in a little bit, lift the other leg, and then push with the foot on the floor and lift yourself up. So the worker leg is the leg that's on the ground. The lifted leg, my teacher calls it the parasite, so it's just going along for the ride. So you're keeping that leg straight and strong. It's active, but it's not the mover. The mover is the one that's on the floor. So you're pushing with the ball of the foot that's on the ground, and then once you get your hips up, the legs will follow. You can try it one more time if you want to play around. Okay, so they get addictive, right? As soon as you start to lift up, then we want to just keep going upside down. Beautiful. And then when we come down, just like handstand, you want to lower with control. So one foot stays up as long as possible, and then you lower one leg and then the other leg. So again, inversions, especially handstand and forearm stand, can be very fiery and exhilarating and energizing. We want to approach them with a playful attitude because when we get too caught up in what's going to happen, then sometimes the pose just becomes too heavy and then we can't ever find that buoyancy. So have fun and play around.